everyone, my name is Deckerlink, the trained unprofessional, and welcome back to All of the Above, the newly revamped interview podcast thing, resurrected from my past. My old radio show now turned into a thing that I talk to people on, which is awesome, because if there's one thing that anyone can see that's very obvious, I love to talk. Today I have with me the two people mainly behind one of the most different, the most intriguing, and one of the most frustrating to get to work on my old shitty computer game, The Pirate's Fate. It's a game that it's another furry visual novel, but with a lot of twists that make it really interesting and really intriguing, and I really look forward to playing it here soon. Please welcome today TF Wright and a sudden appearance by the artist, Volkenfox as well. Hello guys, how y'all doing today?
I'm doing great.
I'm good.
Glad to hear it. I'm glad to hear it. I'm sorry if I sound like I'm dying. I recorded for I streamed for 8 hours last night, very ill-advised. And then I woke up really early today because my dog was freaking out. So if I sound like I'm just like gargling frogs over here, I promise I'm okay. It just sounds like it. So I wanted to start things off by talking, of course, about the subject of why everyone is here and watching it, and that is The Pirate's Fate. A lot of people want to know what started it, what inspired the story, the aspect of it, what is it like developing a game like this. So take me behind the scenes of what started the development. Before we even get into the game itself, what started the development? What put all the pieces together to make this game?
Well, Volkenfox and I had known each other for a while. I was doing stories kind of freelance, and Volkenfox commissioned me to do a few stories, and I had known about his artwork. And then a while ago, a few years ago, we thought, what if we joined forces and created illustrated stories together? And we did about a dozen of these illustrated stories, and then after that we thought, okay, what if we take it to the next level? And we thought about making a visual novel. And I remember at the time when we were, deciding on The Pirate's Fate, I said, well, The Pirate's Fate, like, this isn't really going to be the real game. This is going to be like the test game we make in order to have us figure out how to make a game. And then after we do that, we'll do the real game.
Right.
Go on. I was gonna say that the audience response we got was just so overwhelmingly positive. We realized that this had to be the game.
Yeah, because for the longest time, whenever we would do an illustrated story, we do these sort of bi-monthly Patreon projects, and this was actually just going to be another one of those 2-month cycle projects. It was only going to take we thought it would only take a few weeks, just kind of a little gimmick to change things up, and then it just spiraled out from there. And then all of a sudden, someone suggested that we try Kickstarter, and our Kickstarter originally was just if we make a couple thousand, we'll try to make it into a full game, and then it just kind of ballooned out from there.
Nice. That's actually really interesting to see, like, the behind, like, how it actually came to be. So you were doing these illustrated stories and these little bits and pieces here and there, and it just sort of fell into place by accident. That's the best part, isn't it? When just life sort of happens and takes control. It's like, fuck your plans. This is what's happening now.
Definitely, it was interesting to see how quickly it grew, because we approached this as just something that would take only a couple of months initially. We didn't plan our schedules around doing something really big. So once we ended up committing to this, we're like, okay, well, we can't give up, but like we had all this other stuff going on too. Like on my end at the time, I was just graduating law school that very month, and then so I'm like, okay, well, this is getting a little bit bigger than I thought it was, and then so one of the things that we were doing during the campaign is I was also studying for the bar exam. So I'm like, oh gosh. So I'm trying to balance. I don't know if you've seen our. Well, actually, I think you have seen our Kickstarter page because you used our original Pirate's Fate logo, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that we did is we flooded our Kickstarter campaign with a lot of pictures and so forth. So we wanted to make it, a fun campaign and balancing out that engagement and life, it was an interesting challenge because I know TF had a lot of things going on during then as well. So it was an interesting experience. It's absolutely worth it, though. Wouldn't trade it for the world.
That's wonderful. I'm very glad to hear that. I heard recently, this is completely non sequitur, because you mentioned graduating law schools. You don't hear many furry visual novels illustrated by a freaking lawyer. Certainly have that unique about it. I actually heard here recently that apparently it's called the bar exam because there used to be a physical, just like metal bar between you can't really call it the audience, but like the people watching the case, and then like where the lawyers and the defendant and the accused they sit, where now there's a little wall, that like half wall sometimes. That used to be just a metal bar, and that's why it's called a bar exam. It's to get you from one side of it to the other. I didn't freaking know that. It has nothing to do with anything we came here to talk about. But I heard it, and I thought it was freaking interesting. I have no idea if it's true or not. I just heard it was cool.
Yeah, I have no idea either. That's interesting to know, though.
Yeah.
In my opinion, the bar exam is just a definition of like 4 months of misery. So.
Oh, and that's after 4 years. 4 years of misery with law school.
3.
3 years of misery. Yeah. Oh, nice.
So.
Cool. Well, awesome. So, one of the things that's very unique about the Pirate's Fate is how grand of a scale it is. One of the main talking points in the trailer I saw was how many endings and all the transformations and all the different stuff that can happen. It's a vast game. It's a tree with many branches. And one of the most different looking trunks of it. This is a very weird analogy. I just woke up. I apologize. But there's a lot of branching paths on this thing. A lot of different ways it goes. So what is production of a visual novel on that kind of scale like? Because I know some visual novels, like Echo, for example, they have branching paths, but they all try to tie around one narrative. So it's branching paths, but it's all branches going in one direction straight up. And then other visual novels have different paths that have nothing to do with each other, and it looks like a tumbleweed going down the road. But yours seems to be very much like a tree that seemingly never ends, but obviously it has to. What is production on a visual novel like that in terms of writing, in terms of producing the art, just coming up with the concepts of it all? What is it like to do that?
It was very difficult.
Yeah,
I can imagine so.
As TF can probably elaborate more because he did all the coding for the most part when in terms of like structuring that all out. One of the things that was really important to us is we a lot of games will say choices matter, and I feel like that's thrown around so much these days that most players just kind of learn not to really take that into account, that it's just kind of a buzzword. And one of the things that for me personally that stood out when we were starting was the idea of having choices totally diverge the course of the entire game from one choice to the other without that necessarily becoming a nightmare, which it effectively did in a lot of ways. TF was the one that bore like the big brunt of that, but the idea of making the consequences really start to run the plot and then you managing the consequences of your choices was really meaningful to us, and it ended up being a big character development point for a lot of the story.
Yeah, I would add that the biggest challenge that we had, obviously there were rewrites and redrawings and everything, but we wanted to make sure that we could create different versions of the story that were completely unique while still sort of building on one another. So what would happen is in some paths there would be like unanswered questions, and then other paths would answer those questions, but then raise other questions of their own. Sometimes you would have a character come in and then you'd say, where did that character come from? And then the answer to that character's origin would be some other path, or maybe even a secret ending. So all of the paths are canon. They all sort of tie in with each other. They all answer each other's questions and balance each other out. And it's not like other games where there's like a true path and the writer or the developer is telling you what to do. There's tons of different and equally legitimate ways that the story can go, and you're free to decide for yourself, what you approve of.
Yeah, we actually had a moment, I would say sort of towards the early end of development, where we were structuring out the plot, and we realized that we might actually be unintentionally endorsing a true ending by doing a certain thing, and we ended up backing away from that. I can't say what it is without spoiling it, but it was a really big deal to us to make sure that all the different paths are equally as legitimate. So
nice, and that is very different. That is very different because I mean I've been playing visual novels for a few years now, like on YouTube, and every time I play a game, everyone in the comments like, you gotta go for this route, it's the best ending, or you have to make sure you do all the right choices to get the right ending and all this stuff. So to hear a game where they put so much effort into making sure that there is a cohesive and complete story, but there's like answers in other parts of it where all the stories can be satisfying in and of themselves. There's no ending where you're like, what the shit? What is it? This sucks. Like, there's none of that. Like, there's no intentionally unsatisfying stuff. And trying to keep it all on a level playing field so that you can have a good experience whichever way that the game naturally takes you and you naturally take the game. I really think that is very ambitious and very cool, and I really look forward to seeing how that plays out. So, yeah, awesome. What inspired the story of it, though? Because that is a very unique portion in and of itself, because I've played a lot of these games. I've had a lot of these games recommended to me, and I check a lot of these games out, and a lot of them are just sort of slice of life. Oh, you gotta go do a thing. Oh, but there's the people, and she's oh my gosh, she's cute. It all seems to kind of blend together after a while. So when all of a sudden you get a very different art style, not like what I've seen before, and you get about pirates, and about in a world that's almost completely different, and you're dealing with like coins, and you're dealing with people coming in and taking kids and shit. It's like, holy God, what the hell is it? What inspired the story of it all? Because as soon as I saw coins, I was like, this is Pirates of the Caribbean. But then it wasn't. So you can't really pin it down, at least not in the beginning. That's all I've played so far, and I really liked it. So what inspired the story of it all?
Well, I wanted to do something that was serious and emotionally impactful. I think that you're right, especially in the visual novel sector, there's kind of a glut of slice of life. And you could look at individual things and then you can say, like, well, I wanted to make a game that had the same, emotional impact on others that Undertale had on me. But obviously the story isn't really that similar to Undertale.
Yeah.
But I definitely wanted to go for that type of impact. There's other different creative influences that you can look back that shaped my development to get here. You can say when I was a kid, I think Volkenfox and I both really enjoyed the Choose Your Own Adventure books. You could see some influence in that. Mm-hmm. I was a big Star Trek fan. You could look at the episodic-like nature of some of the scenes and the way certain characters talk, and then you could see potentially some influence of Star Trek there, even though obviously this isn't science fiction. But I mean, overall, I think that there's kind of a hunger for sincerity, a hunger for depth and meaning within storytelling, especially within games. And so I wanted to create a story that players could relate to the characters in a serious way. They could understand that they're going through a very difficult, serious journey. And it obviously is also funny, and it has romantic and light elements too, but I wanted to explore the full range of emotions in terms of this. Obviously the story is very complicated. There is no one thing that I can point to and say that's how I came up with this. It was a reflection of my ambition to achieve a lot of different types of goals.
Nice. And I absolutely love how you put it. A hunger for depth I really love that, because that's absolutely true. Because these are visual novels, and if you're thinking about them in like the traditional novel sense, there's a whole lot of like preteen fiction, basically, of what it is of just light stuff, and with you just getting embarrassed at the cute guy across the room, and he wants to play kickball with me on the field, and oh goodness, and so every once in a while when you get a game like the Pirate's Fate, like Repeat, Echo, these games that just really draw you into a story, I think it not only defies the unfortunate standards of the genre, but it also really works to counteract the stereotype. Because a lot of people will just see anthropomorphic animal characters and be like, well, that's just a furry porn game. Yeah, it's just another furry porn game. That's all it is. But when you actually have games that aren't just furry porn games, it really makes it easier to say, no, wait, there are good ones. So thank you for that. As someone who enjoys them and tries to stick up for them, it really helps our argument if there are good games to stick up for.
Yeah, that was it was definitely important to us to make sure that I mean, we're aware, I mean, like, that's very much the image that most people come into these things with, and especially when you have something like, you know, this transformation, you know, there's characters that you know, get really muscular or they gain weight, etc. You know, there was this, you know, there are people that are always going to walk in assuming that, you know, this is just a fetish game. And one of the things that, you know, that we did when we were walking into that was twofold. We wanted to make sure that on the first part, that the characters drove the story more than anything else, that we did not try to put in something that felt superfluous. And in fact, we ended up cutting a bunch of stuff from the game because we did feel that it was too superfluous. And then the second thing was, once we got in that, to make what was there as meaningful into that character evolution as possible, so that every moment is insight into a particular character. And as TF said before, we structured it in a way where the game thrives on replayability. So you learn one particular element of a person's personality in one path that you would never learn in another path. And when you learn that and then you play that other path, you get a sense of why the character's acting that way without them ever actually needing to tell you in that specific storyline.
I love it. I love that. And that nothing more needs to be said. Quality is quality. I appreciate that. You mentioned Star Trek earlier. I wanted to interrupt and ask, but that is rude, number one. And two, you were in the middle of actually answering the question, so that'd be dumb. Who's your favorite Star Trek captain? I have a favorite, but everyone has their favorite.
I'm a Captain Picard kind of guy.
Same here.
Totally agree. Oh, thank God. And speaking of who's the better captain, who is, in your opinion, the better captain? Captain Jack Sparrow or Captain Hook?
Well, I would have to say probably Captain Hook to an extent. Mostly because he managed to keep people alive for considerably longer than a lot of other story arcs could go, with the whole immortality side of things, if I'm recalling this correctly. Mm-hmm. I guess it depends also on which version of him, but I don't know. I never really saw. I mean, like, he's, you know, villainous, but like he's the laughability of like that sort of lighthearted villainous was kind of interesting to see. But yeah, no, I think I gotta go with Hook.
Okay.
I know Volkenfox does not agree with me, this doesn't directly answer the question, but in terms of the pirate type of story that I have admired the most recently, I really like Black Sails. I like the Game of Thrones type feel where the characters weren't easily identifiable as good or evil. They had like, dark and light sides, and you had to sort of decide on your own whether you approved of the character's actions instead of being told who you're supposed to root for and who you're supposed to hate.
I absolutely love that. When there's a moral ambiguity,
Yes.
I like that. That's one of the things that made me very interested in, like, because people will shit on Star Wars for all, like, the prequels for being all about diplomacy and whatnot. I actually really like seeing that because it not only gives context for the barbarism of the later movies, but it actually gives, like, the Empire, like, it gives the Empire a chance to fucking speak their arguments. And it sounds weird because you're like, these are the people that demolished planets and are building the Death Star and all this stuff, but that you can start to hear the argument, and it's you can kind of decide for yourself if the rebellion is worth it or whatever. And so moral ambiguity, I absolutely love that as a story element. So
I also love the fact that Black Sails was able to have multiple LGBT storylines in a way that it wasn't like they were just adding in one character as like a token. That the storylines were central, they were main characters, and each character's sexuality was kind of different and expressed itself in different ways with the constraints of the time and whatever they were having to deal with. So I felt like they developed those characters very well.
Absolutely. I absolutely love that. Excuse me. I need to take my pill at some point. So you're abstaining from Jack Sparrow versus Hook?
Yeah, I don't think either one of them could be really considered that good of a captain.
Shit!
I feel like they both were kind of. I mean, they both were famous for their failures, basically.
Pretty much. It is interesting that we're all on the same page with Picard. I was gonna bring up the. One of the things that we were actually debating when we were structuring out, the plot in the early days was how we're going to handle situations, because the easiest way from just a plot perspective is just you go violent, you go action, and you go down that route. And I was inclined to start from that perspective initially because I could do, interesting pictures and so forth. And then all the complexity started to come in with if you do an action sequence, you're gonna drain everything out. But from a plot perspective, I agree with you. Diplomacy brings in such interesting questions because you can't always do the most short-term, immediate, gratifying solution, and you have to see how things play out. But because of that, you're given the opportunity to see people who you might have seen as morally gray either reveal their true colors for good, or alternatively reveal their purpose in trying to create something towards your own goals as the player. And that was, something that we found we really wanted to continue to explore the more that we ended up building the story.
I don't want to spoil too much of the story because I know you haven't played too far beyond Act 1, but I'll reveal one little dilemma that happens in Act 2.
Okay.
You're trying to get a coin from a pie shop, and the person who has the coin won't give it to you voluntarily. So one character, BriAnna, suggests, okay, why don't we just break in at night and steal it? And then you meet another person who is a disgruntled ex-employee who says that, they will help you steal it. And Darius says, okay, why don't we just go back to the owner and tell him that we foiled a robbery, that one of his ex-employees wanted to steal this coin, then he'll feel so grateful that he might help us out and give it to us voluntarily.
Ooh.
And so BriAnna's like, no, we shouldn't do that. I'd rather just honestly steal it than do all this sneaky stuff. Honestly steal it? That's kind of there's some cognitive dissonance going on. It's like, and she said, well, I'd rather be known as a thief than someone who betrayed a friend. Ooh. And so there's this question. It's like, what is the right goal here? Is an honest theft the right goal? Is there such a thing as an honest theft? Or is it better to turn someone in who wanted to help you?
Nice. I like that. That's that's tasty.
So those are the type of dilemmas that I try to have in the Pirate's Fate. Is instead of games like Fable, where you just do you want to be good or do you want to be evil? It's that's not satisfying to anybody anymore. Or I would argue it never really was satisfying. So I tried to make decisions that it's actually very difficult to know what to do. And that decision is it appears small, but it actually has big ramifications on the rest of the game.
Yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
and it's one of those things too where one of the things that we wanted to start off with was we wanted to give each individual character their own moral compass, and we wanted to specifically make it so that you as the player playing Mila would not have the same options as a moral compass as these other characters, just to keep the interactions interesting. And seeing how people's sort of guiding principles or how they violate them leads them to behave in these particular ways also help fuel a lot of these situations. Because, like when you have a character like Darius saying something like that, if you only see him for a little bit of time, you might make the assumption that, well, that doesn't necessarily add up. I thought he was supposed to be this upstanding citizen, sort of moral high ground type of guy. But then, like, when you learn more about him, you understand what is the thing that's actually driving him, and then you gain more insight as to why he would think that way. Or alternatively, if you play that scene first and you see that, and then you play a different path and he makes a claim about his own principles, you can now juxtapose that against what you saw in the pie shop scene. And then when that can play into the romances and how you want to, if you actually want to be with them or not, and so forth. Even though we didn't want to make a dating sim. Nothing against them, just we couldn't do both. We had to do either an adventure game or a dating sim, and then with elements of either one. But we definitely wanted to take that into account as well.
Absolutely. Dang, it's like the more we talk about it, the more complicated it's sounding, and my respect for this project, this game, is just going higher and higher. Just hearing how much work and things to balance and all that went into it, because to balance individual character morality and different different times of the stories and different ways to interpret different characters, and holy crap, it's how in the world, as a writer and as an artist, do you balance all of this? It sounds like it could easily be just utter chaos. How in the world do you balance all this stuff?
Well, it did take quite a while. It took 2 years. It took 2 years of pretty much full-time development.
Oh shit! Really?
Yep.
Yes.
We ended up like and we were in this position too when we started. It's real easy to go, hey, it's a visual novel. You slap some pictures on it, do a little text, yes, no for some answers, get a couple paths, you're done. We were like way more entangled in it by the end of that. I mean, just to give you like a small sample of it, when we were just starting Act 3, we were like, okay, we should probably plan out Act 3 before we actually do this so that we have a sense of what we do. And just on what I was making when we were talking, we had over 18 outlines that we went through trying to make it all come together. Because when we wanted to make every path canonically equivalent so that things are approximately taking place at the same time, whether you're there or not, we had to account for all the locations of all the coins, who has what, and all of that. And, and obviously making it entertaining. And it was just, it's an incredible amount of work.
I went through each scene, and sometimes different paths you go to the same locations, but because things are different because of the decisions you made in the past, you might have different members of, you might have recruited different crew members, you might have different transformations, the Mila that you have might be a different version of Mila with a different personality, etc. So because of all that, I'll have the same events play out very differently, but I always make sure that I have a continuity. I have the continuity so fine-tuned that I even have the weather at the same time. So there's like a difficult storm that your ship has to deal with, and I made sure to time that so it's happening at the same time interval on all 3 different Act 2 paths, for example. So yeah, I spent a huge amount of time doing attention to detail. Some of the scenes I had to rewrite up to 5 times to make sure that they were working the way that I wanted them to work.
Jesus Christ.
Yep, and we tried to. Now, granted, we couldn't accomplish everything that we wanted. It was, we could only do so much. But like, we even tried to do things where if you disrupt someone's story, them not going somewhere also can change the path.
Yes,
and it was tricky because we wanted to make these paths different and interesting and feel like your choices totally change the course of events, while also making it manageable for us. Because obviously, if you create a game where every choice along the way totally changes the plot, one of the things that we were quickly finding was you split the path real quick. And if you have a small choice, say that, I don't know, you put on the red shirt versus the blue shirt, and you want that to be meaningful for the rest of the game, you need to account for that in every following scene in order for it to work. And that means effectively writing portions of every scene twice. Then when you compound that with other paths or other splits that you already did, so say that you did, red shirt, black pants, red shirt, white pants, blue shirt, black pants, blue shirt, white pants, it just starts to spiral out of control. And one of the things that we also had to do is figure out how to cut that to something that we can actually handle too.
Yeah, well, one way of thinking about this is if you have, let's just say you have 4 meaningful choices in the entire game that split the entire story. The first choice would turn into 2 paths, the second choice 4, the third choice 8, by the fourth choice you'd have 16. That's already more than the Pirate's Fate had. So you have to be very careful about the number of paths. Pirate's Fate has 8 paths. And within those, I actually have many meaningful choices, so that even if you play the same path twice, in many cases you'll have different things happen. But the more complexity you do, the more careful you have to be.
Yeah, it became real clear to us early on why a lot of people probably don't do this. I mean, you gotta the level of commitment that you have to take to make these choices meaningful it consumes the whole project, and that's what we intended to do. But it's one of those things where I can
go big or go home, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, pretty much. So it's just one of those things where you can't underestimate how much work it is. Just amazing amount of work.
God damn. I feel like all I'm doing is I ask a question, you guys say an amazing thing, and I'm like, fuck!
Well, you're stirring up good thoughts.
Yes. I'm glad, because holy hell. I can barely manage it. Like, when I'm streaming, I'm like, I have a game right in front of me. I can play the game. And then something over here happens. I'm like, oh, what is over there? Like, I could never be a game developer on a game on that scale, on any scale. I can't even get weight on the scale I have in my bathroom because I'm too big for it. I can't. I could never do what you guys did. And there are not many people in the world who could have. So
I appreciate hearing that.
Yeah.
It's we've definitely gotten to a position. I believe TF said this a few months ago, where it's like, I'll never criticize like any other game for being like delayed or slow or not be able to get everything in, because just trying to keep everything together and get everything in and get it on a timely manner. And I mean, we were working 7 days a week. We skipped a lot of holidays. I mean, yeah.
But the truth is that the fans always come first, and I think proof of that is that immediately after the game was finished, we spent a huge amount of time, reading every single review. There's over 100 reviews. I'm very proud that we had a 92% favorable rating.
Awesome.
But we read every single review. We participated in the Steam forums. We had a Reddit. We had, I think, two different Discord servers, and we interacted with as many people as we could. And we were happy that people loved the game for the most part. One thing that people said is, they said, oh, you know what? The game is so great, but I wish the endings were even longer and more detailed. And so we decided, you know what? Here's what we're going to do. As a special thank you to people who supported us and got this game, we're going to make some extended epilogues. And we did that within the first few weeks, and then we released them to everybody for free. So we have 4 extended epilogues that explain what happens, and those are all on different paths.
Holy shit! So you got done with this gigantic project, and just by pure fan adulation, I don't know if that's the right word, adulation, I meant, yeah, that's the right word, because it's like adore, positivity, pure fan positivity, you went back and added more! Oh my goodness. Yes.
Well, it's one of those things where, I mean, this project was crowdfunded, and we wouldn't have done it
I mean, beyond like the whole, oh, well, if it didn't get funded, we wouldn't have done it. It's one of those things where we got our confidence to even try because of the community's interest in it. So we wouldn't be where we are without the support of our fans. So, we want to make sure to, let them know that, we appreciate, them supporting us and having faith in us and, giving us a shot. I mean, it's we want, if you lose that relationship, the whole point of telling a story is to tell it to someone. So you got to make sure that you have an audience that enjoys what you want to hear, what you're saying. So it's just it meant a lot to us. And when we do future projects, we want to keep that in mind as well. I mean, I don't know how much you're aware of it. I mean, almost every character outside of the main crew in the game is a cameo. Oh. And that was its own interesting challenge because we didn't want the cameos to feel, like they were just plopped in there, or totally stick out like a sore thumb or something like that, unless we wanted them to. Mm-hmm. But yeah, no, community means everything to us.
That is fan-freaking-tastic. I love that. That's like a Cinderella story if ever there was one. That warms the heart. It warms the cockles of the heart. I love it. So, you mentioned with characters, that brings me to one of the more interesting aspects of the storytelling of this game. And I mentioned it before, but I wanted to touch on it one more time, is the transformation of the characters. Not many games would dare make their characters physically change as a response to the game's events. And it's integral to not only the elements of the plot, but also it's played out in assets, it's also played out in personality, it's played out so intricately and well, and it's totally unique. I've not seen, granted, I've not played every game, no one ever will, but I have not seen a game that has ever tried so much to put the fate of the game, the Pirate's Fate, into the hands of the choices, so much that they would actually physically change the main character to fit what is going on, the choices they're making, their personality, their physical appearance. I want to hear more about that, because it's an interesting element in storytelling. What brought that about? What made you guys want to do that?
Well, sorry, go. You go first.
I was going to say, transformations have always been a big focus of the creative output that we've done. I've always written about transformation stories. That's just kind of a theme that I like.
Your picture on here says My Transformations.
Yeah, it was the name of my first website.
Nice.
Because I would focus on doing transformation-themed writing. And Volkenfox has also drawn a lot of transformation-style pictures. So that's always been a topic near and dear to my heart. The characters do change in a variety of ways. Body, age, gender, personality, all sorts of types of things. And I decided that I wanted to go even further than that. So if you have the characters change, the story changes along with you because you get a different path with a different theme to it. You get different music tracks on those paths. You get a different interface on that path. You have access to different endings on those paths. And I wanted the story to feel as essentially customized as possible. Instead of just like, oh, you click this so that way you get this like path where some bad thing happened. I wanted it to be like, well, you have this, you chose to act violently, so you're getting this more anger and revenge focused path, or you chose to do this difficult diplomacy, so you're going to be more of a peacemaker, talk it out, or even like hug it out type of a character. And those will all have different types of tools that you'll bring to different types of problems. I happen to think that in a way, all stories are transformation stories, even the ones that don't feature actual like magic transformations. Typically, if you have like a coming of age story, that's a story of like an insecure kid growing into an adult, or if you have a romantic story, sometimes it's a story of an awkward person becoming self-assured and then romantically fulfilled, or something like that. So any type of character development is a transformation of sorts in a way, and we're sort of creating, like, we're literalizing it to make like a living metaphor, if you will.
Nice.
Yeah, to build off of that, the transformations in a lot of ways in this game are that they're symbolic reflections of how these characters are evolving over time. Obviously, when it comes to Mila, they're a reflection of you as the player. We're seeing the consequences of your actions forming a personality for her. But when it comes to the other characters, it's also reflections of their insecurities, their ambitions, their character flaws, and the great thing about transformation is they're great tools to explore conflict. If a character, for example, gains weight and their image is tied, or their identity is tied to their image, obviously them gaining weight threatens their identity. And how a character deals with that makes for good opportunity for the player to engage with that and shape how the character is going to change in response to the transformation that they have endured. Or alternatively, some transformations reveal something about themselves that they have been suppressing, and they have to come to terms with the fact that it is a reflection of what they've always wanted. And what does that mean for them? Especially if they've been denying that their whole life, especially when it comes to well, I won't spoil too much. There's certain topics in the game, but the long and short of it really is that it's a fantastic tool for character development. And in a game like this, where the characters drive, like 90% of the story, we got cool places and locations and so forth, but really it's the character personalities that I think sell the game at the end of the day. Having those tools and just capitalizing them is key. TF said go big or go home, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that I really liked it because the basic story arc of any story, I think it's been a long time since I've been in school, but it's you have your character, conflict is introduced, so they're sent on a journey. We're thinking they're going to end up at a location, but along the way circumstances change to bring about the climax of the story, where they actually end up at B destination, where you don't actually wind up where you originally set out to go, but you end up becoming what is better suit for the new destination. It's a very bare bones form of storytelling that when it's broken down like that, but I really like the idea of literalizing transformations in characters, because there was this great Pokemon song back in the day, because everything changes, really brought out the fact that literally nothing stays the same forever. It's like a river. You can't step in the same river twice, because it's always new water, there's always new stuff flowing through. And so to make such a physical embodiment of the changes that are ever so present in narratives throughout any medium is a really smart and risky choice, because at that point you're really having to balance coordination in storytelling of why they now look like that, or how they react to different situations that could have already been presented with different versions of the same characters, especially in this alternate universe style of telling, with the branching paths, with the a connecting narrative, especially coordinating just the sprites for that, let alone how a character would interact in these different situations. It's very impressive, and I'm really I can't say respect enough. I absolutely respect that choice, because it's unique and it's smart, and I like it.
Oh, thank you. It was interesting that you pointed. It was interesting that you point out the idea of sort of you make a choice and it sort of gets away from you. I feel like that was also one of those important things that we believe in storytelling too. Is that just because the player makes a choice should not mean they get what they intend. Yeah. Now that definitely means that, like, being said. Like, we don't want to just go. It was kind of like an example that always kind of irked me was I don't know if you played Persona 5.
I've always wanted to, I never have.
So I love the game, but one of the little nitpicky things that always annoyed me is all of the dialogue choices would be something to the effect of option 1 would say maybe, option 2 would say I don't know, and like, okay, well that's kind of vague, and then the next choice would be something like I don't want to, and then the second choice would be I don't think we should do it, and then I would be like, well, you're saying the same thing. So one of the things, we definitely wanted to balance between taking away the player's agency by having things sort of spiral out of control, but making sure that it's clear that it's strictly because the player chose to do a particular action. And a lot of the transformations play out that way as well. We could have gone the easy route in terms of like, this potion in front of it has a giant muscular shark on it. I wonder what happens if I drink it. Do I drink it? Yes or no? We didn't want to do that. So like in a lot of cases, the choices that you make spiral out into the results that you get. And you can always trace it back to the player, but that was very much an important thing. So just an aside based on what you said earlier.
Nice. I like that because excuse me. You mentioned the word choices, the responses, what you get to choose from as it. One of the most infuriating things to me as a person who plays visual novels on the reg is when I get a series of choices of how to respond to someone, and they're like, essentially to boil down to yes, affirmative, yes, sort of, no, affirmative, no, sort of, and whatever one you click on, the response you give is not only not what you said, but also has a completely different connotation to the option you clicked on. It's like if yes, affirmative was, okay, I'll do that. That's what you clicked on. But when you click on it, your character says, I fucking love this idea. It's like, whoa, that's not that's not what I said. But you can't just not do that anymore. Otherwise, you'd be spending the entire game going back and forth. And it's one of the reasons why I had to give up playing. I don't know if you've heard of Morinatsu. It's a Japanese furry visual novel. It's kind of an older one. The version I have is kind of is messed up with its translation. And so all the choices didn't make any sense, and above all else, that's what made me so infuriated with the game to the point where I had to just stop playing it. But speaking of other visual novels, what visual novels have you guys, like, what other visual novels do you guys enjoy? Not necessarily ones that you would say inspired you to get into it, but that would also be interesting to hear. But which ones do you like? Have you played any other ones, or was this just a foray into a genre?
I haven't played too many. I played Ace Attorney, and then I also played a game which was sort of inspired by Ace Attorney, which was Socrates Jones. Aside from that, I'll be honest, most of the visual novels that I played kind of made me turn them off after a little while. I remember, for example, playing I think it was the Telltale Game of Thrones visual novel, and turning it off after like 15 minutes because I was like, this is ridiculous. I remember there's this one point where it's like, all of you, come from like, all of you have a father that comes from a different tribe. Which tribe does your father come from? And it's like the north, the west, the east, or the south. And I'm like, well, what was the point? Like, you have no context behind clicking. It's just random,
Yeah.
And I felt like extremely frustrated by that. Or I remember another time I was like, what chore would you like to do? Would you like to chop wood, or would you like to help set up this tent? And I said, help set up the tent. It's like, oh, you're trying to get out of the difficult chore of chopping wood. I see. And I'm like, it felt like the game like required you to look up all the answers beforehand. I just gave up. So I'm not a super huge fan of the genre as it exists right now because there's so much frustration there. I'm probably going to go back and play more games, but I mean, even games that have a fun a fun idea. For example, there's a game called Kindred Spirits on the Roof, which is a fantastic idea of essentially communicating with ghosts who want you to like play Cupid at your high school, because they didn't get a chance to be happy in life because they died young, so they want you to help other couples like be happy. It's a cool idea, but the game is basically has no choices at all. It's just a 100% linear story. And so yeah, I feel like that's one of the ironies. Like, first of all, I don't feel like there's a lot of good examples of the genre out there. And then the second thing I noticed is with our audience, most of the people who said that they loved the game, a lot of them either said similar things or they said they'd never played a visual novel before ever. We actually had relatively few fans of like lots of visual novels who said they were fans. It was mostly people who had problems with the genre or had never tried the genre who liked the game the most.
I think it would probably be fair to say that we were more inspired by choose your own adventure stories than visual novels.
I would agree.
Goosebumps, as TF had mentioned, was a huge influence on us. I can remember in the mid 2000s playing all those online choose your own adventure text-based things. Those had a huge impact on us. On my end, obviously I've played Ace Attorney. How could I not? But I played a lot of the visual novel type projects that I've played. Usually it's more that it's a mechanic to tell the story in part of an overarching game. So like, the Zero Escape series, that's obviously a lot about puzzles and riddles and so forth, but it's told in cutscene style, usually through a visual novel format. Or like Fire Emblem or something like that. And I would pay attention to a lot of that. It was actually in seeing those that I would get, it gave me the ideas for the art and the Pirate's Fate, because I would look at it and I noticed some reoccurring patterns. The first of which was most of the time these felt like they were secondary in the production line. So a lot of the like art assets for these cutscenes would use, I'm sure you've seen this, where there's like 3 expressions for like the main characters, and they would just cycle through those over and over again. Or there would be only like 4 backgrounds and they'd cycle through those again. Or you'd only see like 2 characters at a time, bust shot level, and you get no sense of height or scale, or that there's a crowd and people constantly fade in and fade out. And that bugged me. So I'm like, why can't we make the expressions varied and flood the screen filled with the people who are actually present? Now that proved to be its own technical challenge, especially depending on which path that you get. You can very much end up with characters who are really tall and really short, and there's like 7 people on the screen. But I always thought that was an interesting delivery style. So, but yeah, I guess really though, it was all the games that had a visual novel story mechanic as opposed to the games set off as a visual novel.
Nice. And that was actually interesting. You both mentioned Ace Attorney, and I've played Phoenix Wright, and I don't know why I never thought of that game as a visual novel. I played that before I got into visual novels, but now that I'm thinking about it, that's exactly what it is. Holy shit!
yeah.
It is kind of,
but yeah, it's a logic based,
it's a puzzle basically.
Yeah, it's just hiding. The visual novel choices are just the interrogation part, and then you have the point. I mean, obviously, the later games that add more mechanics, it starts to get away from that. But like the first 3.
That brings me to kind of a design philosophy type thing. Like, one of the things that I decided was that, like, a lot of visual novels or a lot of other games, like, you have a puzzle game or even like an RPG game with a big story, the way to progress and advance in the story is essentially to manage a puzzle or to manage a complicated math problem. Like, oh, I need this character's affection meter to be up, or I need to be able to get this pipe to open that glass window, blah, 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 blah. And when you play the game in that way, when you play the game so that your choices are all being guided toward figuring out how to solve a puzzle, the question is, okay, what do they want me to do here, When you're thinking in that way, you're not enjoying the story anymore. The story is essentially background noise for the true gameplay experience, which is figuring out the puzzle. Yeah. And I didn't want to do that. I wanted to make the story the goal in and of itself, and all of the choices to be appreciated in and of themselves. So you don't have to constantly think like, oh, I don't want to click this because then I'll die and have to start over, or I'll click this and I'll get the bad ending, or I'll click this and my stats will go down and then I'll never be able to achieve Y. You can just play the game on its own, and the choices are all, organic to what happens. You're not necessarily arbitrarily punished for what you do. So, for example, for the romance systems, I didn't make it so that you have to, give a character gifts or butter them up or say the right things in order to have a romantic relationship. But I did make it so that if you romance one character and then potentially want to romance another character, the first character will potentially notice, or the second character will say something like, oh, I have a lot of respect for X. You're already in a relationship with them. I don't necessarily want to come between you two.
Oh, sure.
Or something like that. So I tried to make it organic as opposed to just managing a bunch of math.
Yeah, and then likewise, you can get locked out of certain romances, but not because you didn't pick the left door on Tuesday, avoiding your PE class. It was more along the lines of, did you do something that so fundamentally violates that character's moral principle? And the goal is now. Obviously our success is based on the player's personal opinion of what their experience with the game, but the goal was, if you want to say romance a particular character and they're not interested in you, you should be able to reflect back on your choices and understand why, instead of it necessarily being like in those games where you'd have to give them gifts, like TF said. It would sometimes feel like the relationship is there, but because you gave them 9 presents instead of 10, all of a sudden they don't love you. And that it changes the nature of the relationship too. Beyond that, it just gamifies the context. It also changes the perception that you have of the character because you're trying to buy them over. And we didn't want to have to do that either.
That's a very good point, because a lot of these games rely on affection points and stuff like that. And it always really did feel like, okay, how many times do I have to sit through and force myself to be with this character just so that I can eventually get to the point where their character will actually start to like us? It's like, and yeah, like you said, balancing math and stuff, it feels very disingenuous. So
yeah. There's a place for math. I mean, obviously there have been all of us who played an RPG and tried to min-max the characters so that they're extra effective and enjoyed the satisfaction of solving that puzzle. So I'm not saying that it's always a bad idea, but if you are trying to make a game in which you want the story to be the central focus, and, as a writer, I that is my goal, then I think that having too many puzzle aspects or too many math, algebra equations that you have to solve, that detracts from that, because if you train the player to think that you get goals or progress through the story in quote-unquote the right way, by solving puzzles like Ace Attorney does, or by juggling math problems like most dating sims do, then you train the player to only pay attention to the story and care about the story when those elements are present, and then the other elements of the story are just irrelevant, basically.
Yeah, unless you're a super fan. And that's tricky because, especially for some people like us, we don't have an established series that we can have sort of momentum for fan support in that respect. But the idea of having moments where you can check out of a plot in a plot-based game fundamentally violates our goal. And we had to figure that out fairly early on. I mean, for example, when we were first starting, I had suggested the idea of, well, what if we had interludes, just these sort of moments where you're just on the ship talking to one another and kind of get some more context of just sort of nothing's really going on and you're just talking. And, TF pointed out that if we do that too much, and people realize that it doesn't matter, there'll be people who will just check out. They'll just skip past those scenes because they know that it doesn't impact the plot. So what we had to do was absolutely make sure that all of the story feels that it's tying into one another, so that all of your choices come across as mattering, and that it's all building towards a thing, and that subtlety and nuance is slowly stacking up, so that you're more willing to pay attention to individual sentences.
without spoiling things for you, since you're still early on, I will tell you that if you play the game more than once, TF has embedded multiple little one-sentence lines throughout every path that reference other paths that you will not notice if you're playing the first time, but you'll absolutely notice if you played that other path it's referring to. And that was also important to us in that making sure that you're not tuning out all the plot.
Nice. That's fucking awesome. Because, like, yeah, it really is a managing of balancing. Sometimes developers will accidentally make the plot be a consequence as opposed to the guiding force. And that's really smart. That's really, really smart. God, that's smart. I love hearing things about game development and different elements of storytelling that make me think about these things, because I think the school systems largely make people hate learning as a result of the circumstances surrounding them. But I think learning in and of itself, the learning experience in and of itself can be extremely satisfying if it's something you're interested in. So...
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. I always felt very frustrated and stifled in school, but I always feel like being self-taught is, there's a great advantage there. And, I mean, Volkenfox and I are both people that sort of decided to pursue our dreams instead of use the knowledge that we gained from school, both being, he went to law school and I have a master's degree in political science. And both of us said, like, you know what, we're not going to do this right now. We're going to do, our creative passions that, we had since we were a kid. And so I'm super happy that it worked out.
I think you guys might be the highest educated furry visual novel dev team that I have ever heard of. which is interesting because neither of your degrees, be it a political science major, a master, or lawyer, that had nothing to do with the game as far as I've noticed. Like, okay, political science, that yet balancing the politics of trying to barter and steal for coins and whatnot, that there obviously are elements there, and being a lawyer, being able to talk your way through a situation and figure out the root cause of a problem, yay, nay, be it positive, negative, who's at fault, what's going on here, how can you argue your point. The base elements of those things are there, but they're not the themes. You're not remaking Phoenix Wright, or you're not making a politics visual novel. That's really freaking interesting.
Yeah, we went out of our way in some cases to make sure that, like, when there were moments that might seem like it's a political thing or a legal thing, to make sure that it wasn't grounded in like conventional systems and so forth, so that it doesn't look like we're just, using that type of information. But the big thing that I think happens with this sort of thing is that when you get degrees like that, you're right, we're not doing that sort of thing, but they are degrees based on understanding people. And we try to use our different backgrounds to try to give context to how people think in certain ways. And obviously, again, it's up to the player to determine how successful we were with that. But it was... That's kind of where our skill set sort of has come in. I mean, there's really minor stuff, too. I mean, like, on my end, there's really minor stuff like, hey, I know that we got to make an LLC. We can't be a partnership because we'll, blah, blah, blah. But, like, that's, like, so... It barely comes into question. But, like, at the end of the day, it's about understanding people. And it's why we made a game that's focused on the characters overall. Because, like, there are games that do it well, but there are games that are, like, world-building based and so forth. So, if you... that probably actually play up well with TF's education, because the whole idea of structuring a society. But at the end of the day, it's characters make or break our interest, and we wanted to focus in on that.
That's phenomenal. I love it. And that's... You mentioned earlier, and you touched on it again, the idea that characters are really the driving force of this game. And there was a point that I made watching Brain Dump. It's a series on YouTube by this guy, Hot Diggity Demon. It's entertaining. It's kind of like edgy trash humor, but not trash humor. I don't even want to call it that. But it's not what you'd call highbrow.
Oh yeah, no, I've watched.
Oh, you're familiar. Awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, because he was the guy behind the pony.mov videos, so you know what you're dealing with. But they were talking about the Powerpuff Girls remake, and they made the point to say that cartoon characters are their voices. And obviously it's a little different in a visual novel sense, because you get to kind of change what your character does, and it affects the stories around them, and you're reading the words for the most part. But your visual novel, The Pirate's Fate, has partial voice acting. I don't know if the partial voice acting is a deliberate choice, or if it was or if it was just a limitation of the medium, or what. Why, before I get any further, why are only some lines voiced?
It was a limitation of the fact that we're an indie team of just 2 people, and it would have been organizationally too hard and financially too expensive.
Yeah, you got to remember the story is almost 200,000 words long.
Fuck.
So voicing all of that would be, and plus there's like all these questions of like, finding all the people, keeping the quality up, keeping everyone, either getting them for free or paying them or figuring all of that out, giving them all the scripts, giving them the scripts early enough. I mean, that was all the logistics problems. So we ended up in a position where we knew that we couldn't voice the whole thing, so how do we do it? Well, effectively, we tried to give people enough to get a sense of how the characters talk, and then they could just imagine that voice, or whatever voice they really wanted to, but to give them something to ground them for like the rest of the scene. There is a rule that we did make on whose voice and who's not, but I won't tell you what that rule is. So
I appreciate
that. Yes. But yeah, no, I mean, like, the reality is overwhelmingly just the limitation of our budget and team size. But we tried to make it work as best we could. Some people thought, like, is it broken? No. Is it, are they going to add this in later? No.
I will admit that because I'm a first, we're first-time developers, I did not think through in advance when I was writing the script what parts ought to be voiced and what parts ought not to be, especially because there were so many script rewrites.
Yeah.
So in the future, what I'll do is I'll come up with a system. Maybe it'll be like only cutscenes, or maybe it'll be like only, at the end of a scene or the beginning of a scene or something like that. I'll come up with some kind of system that makes better organizational sense for where the voice moments should go. That will be the thing that I do differently.
Okay.
Yeah, because one of the things that to give you some context, when we realized that like we couldn't just put them in cutscenes, because a lot of cutscenes don't even have a lot of text in them.
Yeah.
We spent probably 2 weeks maybe of like all-nighters trying to like stress out, figuring out where there's going to be dialogue.
It took a lot of time to get the scripts to the people, and then it also took a lot of time to assemble the team. And then after that, we had most of the people didn't format a lot of people didn't format the lines in a way that the program could accept. So we had to have help recutting the lines and then integrating them into the program, essentially one at a time.
And there were just like minor things that, through our own inexperience dealing with voice actors, where, for example, we didn't realize how much pronunciation guidance to give people. So people were, darn, I can't say any of the names. I'll spoil things. So I'll say this, so a surprising number of people, for example, mispronounced the main character's name, and so like we've learned since then to like make sure that we're gonna tell them beforehand so that we don't have to correct them later.
Yeah.
So that was its own little challenge.
Yeah, because voice actors, we're a feisty bunch.
No, a lot of them were really accommodating, which is really good. But yeah, it was just it was an interesting experience. I mean, we learned a ton in doing this. I mean, even if we were to just make the same project again, same format, same mechanics, same length, etc. I mean, we could streamline so many elements of it just through what we've learned.
Well, I mean, yeah, that we were talking about being self-taught. I mean, that's learning through experience is one of the most prolific ways to learn anything.
Yes, or in this case, learning through pain in a lot of cases.
Yes, the school of hard knocks.
There was there's all sorts of stories we could tell with that one. I mean, like, if you looked at our Steam description, we talk about how there's almost 50 romances. Mm-hmm. I'll put it to you this way: I probably drew more like 120.
Fuck.
And a lot of that was like we would do things where it's like, okay, I'll draw X and Y together, and then we talk about the plot and we try to structure it, and then TF would come and say, I don't think we can actually get X and Y together. It's going to be Y and Z. Well, I didn't draw Y and Z. Okay, well, now you got to draw Y and Z together. And then it would be a situation where, like, okay, well, you drew Y and Z, 14 months ago, and you're drawing the rest of these now. They look too different. So you got to go and redraw Y and Z again, but better.
Aww.
Or it would be one of those things where we'd have a situation where we'd go, okay, we're going to do A and B together. And B was, designed a particular way. 6 months later, we're in a position where, like, okay, I have bad news. B's design blends too much with other characters. It doesn't look right. We got to redesign B. So then I got to redo A and B. So, like, there's all sorts of things like that, and be it the art, the writing, the programming, the music, the voice acting, the trailer making.
Fortunately, if you're interested in these romance pictures that didn't make it into the game, we actually produced an art book that contains all of the cut content. Every single thing that we made that didn't make it in, we decided to add to the art books. You can check those out. It's over 400 pages.
Yeah, that was a huge deal to me. I can't. I mean, like, if you don't have it, you don't have it. But, like, I couldn't stand how a lot of games only give you like 13 to maybe 40 pages of content for their game. Like, I want to see everything. So I just gave, we gave pretty much everything. We got all the art assets, all the cut romances, every cutscene, every image of every cutscene, all the endings, all of it's in there. We try to include commentary. It's, we wanted to make it worthwhile. So yeah, it's like it's an over 400 page art book. With commentary.
Is incredible. That is incredible. I absolutely fucking love that. God dang. I keep finding it's so hard to be an interviewer when the interviewees keep leaving me speechless. It's amazing. It's a wonderful problem to have. So I guess bringing it back to what inspired that was the voice acting. One of the 9,000 levels of development is the voice acting. How did you go about selecting voice actors? Because as a voice actor in the making myself, I would like to know how people find work, and also how working with a dev team can be. Obviously, it's not an industry standard thing. I'm not expecting this to be the rule. But how did it work for you guys?
Well,
yeah, it's
it's a very long story. So,
you could spend an hour just on that one question.
Many hours. I guess the short version would be some people clicked. So, for example, we had Liko is played by a person that goes by Luprin, and that was a situation where I just happened to know him. So I'm like, hey, I know that you like doing this sort of thing. Oh, would you like to try it? Those are the easier ones. And in those cases, what we did is we gave them a cameo, and obviously they became personally invested in the character. So we tried to, assign where we could a voice actor to a character they identify so that they're more personally invested. In a lot of cases, though, we had to, find third parties that, that were professional voice actors. And, it's
It's very tricky. It's tricky on about 4 different levels. The big area that's tricky that you would think is obviously the person's voice. If they can actually deliver, they can read lines well. And when you're at a budget like ours, we are in a position where we can't be too picky, but at the same time, people that are willing to do it for a small cost might be willing to do it for a reason. And we lucked out in that we got people who are really good. And it was a product of we had to look for a long time. The other thing is a lot of them came through contacts from our composer. Our composer goes by Rourke, and yes, it's the same character.
That's his cameo.
That was his cameo.
Nice.
So a lot of people that he knew came in. They were, I believe, most of them were hobbyists or aspiring voice actors. So this was an opportunity for them to get in fairly early on. As for working with people, I mean, a lot of people were fantastic. They were usually pretty accommodating. I'll be the first to say we didn't really know what we were doing. We were trying to get the scripts to people because there was this whole situation where we're not giving them the whole script. We can't give them 200,000 words and tell them read this for 10 minutes of dialogue.
No, ideally, what I would have liked to have done was to send somebody the finished product minus the voice acting and say play this game. But the game wasn't finished at that time, so we couldn't.
Right, they couldn't be.
Yeah.
But what I would say to you is if you're interested in tips from us on how to advance your voice acting career, 2 things. First of all, reach out to people who, if anyone you know is actually making a project, reach out to them, reach out and say, you may have a team that's full. Do you know other teams that need someone? And ask them if they can help you network. That would be good. The other thing is, I don't know, do you have a demo reel?
I have one that I made in 2013 that's very out of date.
Well, make a new one. Yeah, make a new one, put it on YouTube, put it on others, SoundCloud. You could even put it on Fiverr. Fiverr is a reputation for getting a lot of people willing to work for a small amount of money. But effectively what your Fiverr thing can be is just essentially an advertisement for your personal website or your YouTube channel. And it's just a way to get more traffic. So getting a good demo reel and posting it to as many places as you can is probably the best way to get noticed by people like us.
Yeah, I can't emphasize this enough because I know a lot of people have contacted us asking to be if they could be a voice actor, and unfortunately a lot of it was just a case of we already had made the game. But I will tell you, the demo reel is what really helps decide it, because in some cases people would have just a YouTube channel, or SoundCloud it'd be say a podcast. And we learned this the hard way early on, that people who talk casually, or they talk off the cuff, or they're interviewing someone, they do not deliver the same way when they are delivering read lines. And if you can give us a demo reel, you as the royal you, a demo
I'm not
reel.
auditioning right now.
Yeah. If you give us a demo reel where you're demonstrating that you are reading a script, not just making voices, not speaking off the cuff, that's what will sell it, because that's what we're looking to hear. That goes a really long ways. So I can't emphasize the demo reel enough. I guess the other part is I don't want to be in that position where I'm telling people ask questions. Don't ask questions, because that varies by team. Some people want to be engaging, some don't. But when in doubt, I would say make sure that you got the pronunciation down, or if you're not sure, probably should ask. Mm-hmm. It doesn't do anyone any good if you send a recording and you mispronounced a name, because either you put the developers in a position where they feel awkward having to ask you to re-record, or alternatively, you see the game finish and everyone's pronouncing it, Charles, and you're the one guy that went Charles, and you look like an idiot. So
I absolutely yeah,
that's hilarious.
That was actually funny story. When I was graduating high school, my high school did this cool thing where, since our graduation was broadcast on TV and it was a pretty big high school, they had students read the names of people as they were walking across the stage. And there was about 8 of us, and so they divided all the names by in 8, and they gave us the list. And they made sure right away to during our graduation practice to be like, okay, all the people reading names, go to a corner of the gymnasium. Everyone who is in the list for your section, go tell them how your name is spelled, because I don't want anyone up on that stage saying weird shit and having all their families getting mad because you just said Charlet to 5,000 people.
Exactly. And the irony is that in a lot of cases, I mean, obviously, you'll get the person that manages to mispronounce Charles, but in a lot of cases, it doesn't seem like you're mispronouncing it, but you end up doing it anyway.
Yeah.
It's so you got to be careful with that. The other big thing that I would say, because like a lot of the people that worked with us were fantastic, and one of the things that they would do is they would do multiple recordings. So they'd try different inflections, and then they would give us both of it. So we could pick. And that ended up giving us a lot of flexibility. But I guess the last thing that I would say, and it's really straightforward and it seems obvious, but I think people forget to do it, is listen to the thing that you're sending us before you send it. It was, as a developer, we listen to some things, and there are instances where I guess I would call them like typo level stuff, like, oh, I can hear you clicking your mouse, or I can hear that your air conditioning turned on in the background, or something like that. Especially, if you're doing this from home.
Yeah.
Check for all that, because it's like you don't want to be put in that awkward position where you get an email saying like your cat was meowing in the background. So.
Yeah.
Not saying that's what happened. I'm just saying, like,
as an example. Yeah,
but
I appreciate all that. I really do. Because I actually, in the first episode, I don't know if I made him mad or if he was just clarifying. But we mentioned Rourke. My intention with this moment. I've had to explain this to so many people that thought that they were like, "What the fuck is going on?" The Rourke voice and the Rourke character design. When I first saw the moment that he was introduced and started to talk, I started to laugh, and it was a misleading response. The reason I started laughing was because I didn't know the character yet, didn't know how fucking menacing he could be. 2, it was a cold introduction. So it was just, here he is. You can see the characters are scared to see him in, and you see this big guy, and then you see this little guy, and it's kind of like in Zootopia, where they're like, who's going to be the Godfather mouse? Or was it Mouse? I don't know. And you see these big guys,
like or something.
Yeah, and he's this tiny guy. So when I saw Rourke, I heard this very deep, methodical, thought-out voice with a tiny guy in what looked to be oversized clothes. And because it was a startling character and a contrasting design choice, instead of what I should have done and say, "Oh, that's interesting" or something like that, my response was to laugh because it's off the cuff. It's improvised, but I can definitely see how that would have come across as offensive, and I didn't intend it that way. God knows I would never try to just go after someone because of a voice acting thing or anything like that. I'm not here to rip these games to shreds. I'm actually trying to enjoy the game. I hope I've communicated that over the past hour that I like the freaking game.
Who is your favorite character so far, by the way?
So far, and it really sucked because I was really starting to take a more a liking to BriAnna, and then I don't know if you've seen the absolute shit.
I saw what path you got. Yeah.
Yeah. That kind of hit me. That hit me hard. So
we had one streamer like actually scream when that happened, and then they immediately reloaded because they didn't want to lose that character.
Yeah, and that it's fucking tough. It really is, and that, but yeah. So the guy who voiced Rourke, he came on and he left me a comment explaining why he gave him the voice he did, and I tried to respond saying I wasn't trying to make fun of you. I'm so sorry. I don't know why I started laughing. I explained the contrast in character design thing. And contrast isn't like a euphemism for a bad word. Like it's just a word. It's just a descriptive word. But he never responded. So I just really hope that I didn't offend him or any of you or anyone, because my response in situations is almost always not the one that it should be. I remember one time I was riding on the hood of a car because I'm dumb, and they took a hard turn on gravel, and I flew off the car, and I got rocks and cuts and all over that stuff, and I started laughing because it was funny, and because I was exhilarated. I was ramped up. So I just had a bad reaction, but...
No worries. I don't feel offended, and the truth is that even if you do have a negative reaction to any element of the game, that's okay. I don't feel afraid or offended or anything by constructive feedback or anything like that. Like I said, we actually expanded an element of the game in response to constructive feedback, people saying they want a longer ending. So I don't view my creative content as something that other people have a responsibility to enjoy in the way that I see fit. I view it as it's your job to enjoy it in the way that you see fit, and whatever reaction you want to have is totally fine with me.
Yeah, that's why I keep saying, for example, like, our success is dependent on what the player actually experiences. As for Rourke, I'll if it makes you feel any better, it's one of those situations where we were definitely going for throwing you off because we wanted you to go, well, this person's clearly conveying themselves evil. They're conveying themselves, as a big guy in a big coat, and from a visual end, it doesn't come across until probably like 15 or 20 minutes later.
When his actions actually start to give him away, it's like, oh my god, this is legit.
Right. And it's one of those things where, so obviously you see all that, and then not all of that could be voiced. So it's one of those things where we had to get the emotion across as concisely as possible. So when he was voiced, he was voiced very over the top in that way to come across as that menacing. Because in a way, like in some respects, our goal was to try to fake you out. Like, it's like, oh, there's no way this guy can be this. This is clearly the comical character. Oh God, no, it's not. And,
And that 2 episodes in, you got me. You convinced me of that. Holy shit.
It'll be interesting because obviously, different paths do a variety of things. One of the big things that happens is who becomes your main antagonist. And in some paths, it's going to be Rourke. Some paths, you get to know other characters. Not saying anything particularly happens. Obviously, in some paths, you get to know particular members of Rourke's crew more than others. And I will be curious what your impressions of those characters are by the end, relative to what you thought of them in the very beginning, because I know that there are a couple of characters that people also evaluated a particular direction, and then that was totally flipped around as well.
Yeah.
So no, your reactions. I mean, you didn't offend us. Obviously, I don't want to speak for anyone outside of us, but I would imagine they probably understand too.
Yeah.
So
I hope I didn't offend him, but I guess I'll never know because he didn't respond. But that's his right. He is also a busy person. I looked at his channel; he's like streaming every day or something. I'm like, holy shit, dude. But yeah, it's the theme was of transformation. It's a transformation of a perception of a character. It's like there's two transformations happening: the character actually transforming, and the idea of a character in the player's head transforming. And one of the best ways to do that, I can imagine, is setting an expectation and then defying it, because then you get instant transformation. When you see someone who looks menacing but is nice, or vice versa, then you automatically kind of feel closer to that character because you've already gone on a bit of a journey with them. So that's actually, now that I'm freaking, and this is the whole thing. It's like I'm interviewing you, but at the same time I'm like learning. I'm getting almost more out of this than I intended, and it's awesome. But yeah, it's like two transformations at once, and I like that. See, I'm saying everything. I like that. I just like a lot of things. I don't know. Is it getting annoying to you guys? I don't know.
Nope. One of the things that was also we tried to do beyond just defying expectations is there's a very different type of transformation that people, I think, underrate, which is the idea of not actually defying the expectation, but changing your perception of someone who hasn't actually changed. So, for example, if you have a character who's mean, and they're mean at the beginning and they're kind of mean at the end, but through learning about them and reflecting on yourself, all of a sudden you change your interpretation of what that meanness means to you. That's its own transformation from the player's perspective, and we tried to accomplish that in a few different ways as well. Again, we'll see if you think that we actually succeeded, but that was definitely one of our goals too. Which we try to do a bunch of different comments on character change in this game.
Very cool. I didn't even think about that, but that's why y'all are the degree holders and I'm the schmuck in his freaking living room. Oh, man. See, that's actually very interesting because you guys are saying a lot of very intriguing, very important, very thought-provoking stuff about game design, about storytelling, about all this stuff, and you're a first-time dev team. There are people who have made countless shitty games and they haven't learned a thing. You, on your first time through, are saying things that I haven't heard anyone talk about. That is...
the failure of others is kind of what inspires us in some ways, is because it's like when I'm trying to think of a new idea, sometimes seeing a good idea that had poor execution can be very inspiring to me, because I'll think to myself, how would I have done this better? And so, yeah, I think that if the world was filled with wonderful stories and wonderful games that did everything perfect, it might be difficult to inspire myself to want to add in my own contribution, because if everything's already fine, why make the effort, right?
That's a good point.
And the interesting thing is, you don't even necessarily have to have a game execute poorly. I mean, even if you have a game that, I don't know, B+ everywhere, but like a C+ in another particular area, and that area is up your alley, it will spawn all sorts of thoughts. I mean, a lot of games, I mean, I'm sure you've seen all the articles that presume this. A lot of people keep assuming, multiplayer is what drives things, not plot. And that always annoyed the beans out of me. So I would, I constantly, well, how do I make a story that's interesting? How do you make the driving force of a project the actual plot? And, a lot of people have succeeded in fantastic ways, and there's all sorts of ways to learn from that too. But that drive to want to fulfill what you perceive as a void in the industry can go a really long way.
It's really, you said annoy the beans. I was listening to everything. I don't want it to seem like I'm not. But I've just noticed something. I am the only one in this entire interview that has swore at all. You guys are very clean. Like the cleanest interview I've ever had. I've only done 3 episodes, but I've done radio in the past, and people on a live show that I've said, okay, there's a list of words on the wall you can't say. Don't say these words. Okay. First word out of the mouth is fuck. I'm like, what the hell? But you guys with free reign haven't. commendable. I'm not. That's not a criticism, by the way. It's just something I've noticed. Like, is that an active choice, or do you? I mean, you obviously, if you're a professional and going to be around people like a lawyer or in politics, you can't be swashbuckling and swearing like a pirate or a sailor. Keeping in the theme, but
I'll tell you this: the nastiest things I've ever heard have come out of. I am flabbergasted by how that seems to be an ongoing theme. That so there's a lot of for me it's not really an active effort. I don't have any problem with swearing. I just ever since I was young, I kind of viewed it as a creative challenge, because if you don't swear, you have to come up with interesting ways to say things. Yeah. And it's not saying it always succeeds, but no, I'm like, it's not like I going out of my way to be like, no, we got to make this conversation G-rated. So nah, it's just a speech tick, I suppose.
Hey. Yeah, I mean, I swear on occasion, but I don't really like. The occasion hasn't presented itself, so we'll see if it comes up later.
Well, now people are gonna I'm just trying to get them to swear now. No, it's all right. Well, before we get into the fan questions, get into talking back, I want to bring it kind of full circle, because the way this all started on my point was receiving a very lovely email, and I was just, because when I say in a video that someone sent me a game, I have to clarify that I didn't ask for it, because people will be like, oh, you're just playing this game and being nice because they freaking sent you the game, which is not the case. Okay, no one told me to be nice, no one told me to say anything, and if they did, I wouldn't freaking do it, because fuck that. But how did I wind up on your list of people to send the game to, and why?
We looked at every single person that reviewed other furry visual novels, and obviously your name came up very quickly.
Yep. And then we would, I mean, it was pretty, we're not marketing experts, so we spent a lot of time, particularly so obviously towards the end, TF in doing a lot of the actual putting the characters and the text and all that into the engine and balancing all that out. My end was mostly done, so I spent an inordinate amount of time looking up who reviewed what, and then trying to watch their videos to see is this someone that we like to send the game to? And yeah, you came up both quickly, and then it was clear that you enjoyed this kind of content. We also tried to pick people who reviewed specific games as well. One of the people that one of the projects that we got compared to frequently in development was Major Minor. Mm-hmm. So we spent a lot of time looking up people who had reviewed that, and then I looked up other visual novels like Echo, Repeat. Trying to remember some of the other ones. Obviously, the Neko Jishi. I forget the name of it. Yeah. I found that looking at people who actually sat down and played those games, on YouTube was a good way to go. I mean, because this is not a project where, even though we're not, I mean, we sent out stuff, where we could, but it's not really a project that you're going to see something like GN cover. I mean, it's not their genre. So, I mean, we saw what you did and we liked it and wanted to approach you. You were among some of the first people we approached.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate that, because that sometimes you spend so many hours just playing a game. It's helped with the streaming now because it feels less isolated, but just how many hours just sitting playing a game, and then even more hours editing, more hours rendering, more hours uploading, more hours managing the metadata on the channel and all this other shit. It gets to the point where well, does anyone fucking care? Because you see comments every once in a while, but it can seem like just people passing or coming and going. But when someone's like, we have put years into this game and we want you to play it because we've seen what you do and we like it, that I fucking cried. I was so fucking happy. Well,
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah, absolutely. And on that very positive note, let's move right into the fan questions. It is time for TF Wright and Volkenfox to do Talking Back. So this is just a culmination of fan questions that came about on a video that I posted yesterday, so there might not be as many. Usually I like to leave a week, but I understand with schedules and whatnot, that ain't always going to happen. So I put out the video very late yesterday, asking people for their questions, and these are the ones that came about. Feel free to answer them if you want to.
Sure. We'll do our best.
I appreciate that. You've been doing pretty good so far for the past 2 hours. By the way, is there a time crunch? Should I rush? Should I hurry?
I'm okay.
I'm fine.
Okay, I won't take up the rest of your freaking night, but I will. I wanted to make sure. I should have asked that first if I was a professional, but I'm the trained unprofessional. I should have asked that first if we had a limited time frame. So the first fan question comes from Mojave Red Fox, who asks, what inspired or motivated you to work on this project, as well as who is your favorite character?
We already talked about what inspired us to do the project. Favorite character, that's kind of a tough question, because different characters I enjoyed in different ways, but the character that I had the most fun writing was BriAnna. I really like her personality. She's the type of character that I've wanted to write for a very, very long time. I did a NaNoWriMo challenge. It's National Novel Writing Month. The challenge is to write a 50,000 word book in 30 days. And I did that while I was an undergrad. And even back then, and that was 2005, I had a character that was in some way similar to BriAnna. So some version of her has kind of sat in my head for a while. So she's a character that I like. What about you, Volk?
As TF can attest to, I am frustratingly unwilling to pick favorites. When you've drawn... I mean, at this point, it's like, you know, when you're nearing like 1,000 art assets, not counting cutscenes, you kind of have to get attached to each one in order to be able to endure, you know, doing it. So what would happen, instead of necessarily having a particular favorite, I would instead, when I'm working on a particular character, there are elements of the character that I really like. And it was one of those things where we tried to make it so that there were no characters in the game that either of us just like were slogging through. So as a result, I like all of them, really.
All right, I can respect that. Just so that we don't discard the first part of the question, because I guess I'll kind of reword it, like, what motivated you to work on this project, but what motivated you to keep going? Like, was it just pure, unadulterated dedication to the fans, to the work that you know you could do? Because at some point, there has to have been a moment, at least once, where you looked ahead down the road and you were like, fuck, that's a lot of work to do. So
yeah, it was very, very difficult, and it was much harder than we thought. It took much longer than we thought. But there was never an option in my head of like giving up. I knew that I wanted to do this. I had a lot of reasons. I wanted to do it because we promised to. I wanted to do it because it was my goal, and I wanted to be creative and tell the story. I wanted to do it because I wanted to help advance this, you know, my career and be able to see if I could make games. But I'm not the kind of person that gives up in the face of a challenge. There was. I'll tell you one little moment where I was very. Not to toot my own horn, but I was very proud of myself. I was at a convention a few days before launch, and one of the first people to review the game on YouTube discovered that there was a bug that was causing the game to crash. And I talked to the person who was our coding consultant, and he said he didn't know what to do, and he recommended just launching the game with the bug, because he said that we couldn't fix it. So then I actually talked to the guy who developed the engine, who lives in Japan. And I said, there's a bug with this program, how do I fix it? And the guy who developed it said, I don't know how. You should just launch with the bug and tell people how to avoid it.
Ew.
And I believe that people would not be able to avoid it because it was pretty frequent. It was actually causing the game to crash whenever you tried to access the menu while a scene was loading or fading out.
Oh shit.
And me, who has no programming experience, despite the fact that I had just come back from this convention in which I had like almost no sleep for 3 days, I stayed up and I successfully figured out how to fix this bug myself, and then we launched and there was no bug.
Holy
And
shit.
that was one of the most proud moments ever, because literally everyone, including the guy that wrote the program, was telling us to give up, and I'm like, no, I'm not going to give up. We're going to fix this bug before launch.
That's fucking incredible, dude.
Thank you.
That's freaking sweet. Oh,
Yeah,
man.
we had a lot of moments like that, unfortunately. But yeah, we tried to we tried to persevere through it. You know, it's one of those things where getting the thing done, you know, it's you would be amazed how much of a motivation that ends up being when you've committed so much into something already. Now, obviously, sometimes that can end up being like a weakness. There are some projects where people get overcommitted and then they don't let go of something that they should. But, you know, we genuinely believed that if we could get the thing out there as we more or less intended it, people would like it. And we were getting a lot of support along the way by people, you know, effectively confirming that, like when we were doing the beta testing and so forth, you know, people were pointing out all sorts of flaws. I mean, our first wave, I don't know if I'd call it beta. I mean, I guess like alpha, you know, it was riddled with bugs and typos. I mean, like, you know, we had an editor go through the entire script. We both proofread the script. We read through the script multiple times over, but still finding typos. There were drawing errors. There were coding things. Sometimes characters would spontaneously transform into the wrong version of thing.
I think by the time we were finished with beta, we'd fixed 1,000 issues, right?
Yeah, it was, and it's, and I don't mean that to sound like I mean, to an extent, it's true that we don't know what we're doing, but like, it's one of those things where not only do we have to learn, but it's like when you get to the scale of that, it's horrifying in of itself. But when you're so far in and you can see that it's going to work, if you can just get it out there and get it functional, you'll do quite a lot for it.
Yeah, I mean, it very much rings of like taking a guy off the street and putting him in the freaking octagon with the UFC heavyweight champion, whoever the hell. Like, it's a daunting task for a first time. It'd be a daunting task for a freaking seasoned dev team. And so, freaking goddamn. I can't. I'm running out of ways. I think I've already run out of ways to say that I'm thoroughly impressed.
Well, I greatly appreciate it. What's the next question on the docket?
Yeah, so let's move on. The next question on the docket is from Damn You Emron, who asks, how long have you been working on this game? Do you think you'll make another one? I mean, you kind of already answered the first part, but...
We're still looking at that. We're also still looking at making more content for this game, including potentially an expansion or something. We're hopefully going to make an announcement about that soon. But yes, we definitely want to make more stuff in the future, but we can't answer any questions about what that will be yet.
Yeah, and you know, it's also one of those things where we have to, you know, you got to figure out it's a balancing factor too. I mean, you got to figure out what is it that we want to do. If we think that we can do it well, and if we think that we can make it a meaningful experience that's not merely repeating over the Pirate's fate. So, you know, we would love to do another project, but we definitely want to make sure that whatever we pick, we try to, you know, do it right. So
cool.
we're thinking it over.
Nice. The next question comes from Bobby Thornbody, who's actually the guy who also suggested the screen cap thing, so shout out to him. This one's more technical. He said, I've completed all possible endings and supposedly viewed all romances in the game. However, even despite having done so, I've discovered that, while I've found all 24 endings to the game, no route path that I can see will get me to 2 of the 45 romances that are available to be viewed in the game. I've looked online, I've done multiple save files to go back and try other options, but still 2 of the romances appear to be unobtainable. Is this because 2 of the romances were scrapped during the finalizing of the game and the spaces for them were left in the romance list without meaning to do so? Or are they able to be found by some means I have not explored? The 2 I'm missing are romances 16 and 35. If they have in fact been left out, was the fact the spaces in the romance log were left in purely an oversight?
The way the romance the gallery works caused a lot of it was kind of a headache to get working right. The spaces are an accident. I do not know how to get rid of them, unfortunately. As like I said, I am not a real coder. I had to teach myself, and I'm working with a new engine, which was not. It still has some kinks to work out. So that yes, if you want to view all of the romances, and to see the ones that are in the game and are not in the game, my suggestion would be to get the art book because that has all the romances and all of the cut romances. But yes, there are 2 spaces. They're not. Those are not like that was just a programming hiccup basically.
All right. Question five. Oh, it's really 4. Is from Chef, who asked, "Is this your first game?" Yeah. Yes. If not, then what projects have you worked on in the past? So I guess for this one, just elaborate more on what you did before that. Like, where can they find the illustrated stories you had talked about?
I'll go ahead and drop a link. We have them on Gumroad and also on Amazon.
Oh, nice.
So I'll go ahead and drop a link here.
Sweet. I'll make sure to put that in the description when the video comes out.
We sort of made them for a slightly different audience, because at the time we were doing that, we were sort of I don't even know how to put it really. I think that the difference is when we made the Pirate's Fate, we wanted to make this really interesting story that had these transformation elements. And when you look at the books that I made in the past, they were transformation-themed stories. And that may seem like a subtle distinction. It's hard to explain what exactly the difference is. You could say that in some cases they're more romance-focused, or some of them don't have any romances, though. So I guess just be prepared for the transformations to be like more have more focus than in the Pirate's Fate, if that's possible.
Nice. All right. The next question is from Jaro the Pangoro, who says, "Will we be seeing the pirate's booty?" I'll interpret this one to mean, are there any NSFW scenes in the game?
No, the game is PG-13. You have 43 odd romance scenes, and some of them are affectionate, some of them are sensuous, passionate, but there is no nudity, no explicit content. This is not an 18+ game, so it is the same amount of raciness that you get in a PG-13 movie.
Nice. The next question comes from Cotton Candy, who asks, "Are you planning to be part of another project or make something yourself? What do you plan for future creation?" So this question...
I think we sort of already covered that, right?
Well, yeah, but I was going to explain that this question was commented back when... because when I posted the video, at that point, it was only for UTF. So I'm guessing what this one means is, are you planning on breaking out yourself?
I would like to make more projects with Volk again. I don't know if I'm going to continue to do only games or if I'll ever write books on my own, because I've written like about 45 books, and about 10 of them are with Volk. The other 10 are books by myself. It is possible that I was the programmer and the writer for this project. It's possible that in the future we'll have like a full-time dedicated programmer helping us, and that might give me more time to eventually work on writing 2 different projects at once or something. But so I can't say for sure what the future will hold, but I would like to make another project with Volk in the future if possible.
Nice. And of course, extending the same question to you, Vulcan. Are are there any other developers you would like to do art for, or maybe try to learn how to program yourself? Or is Fox Wright Productions, which I feel stupid at the fact that I just realized is a mix of TF Wright and Volkenfox, I'm so stupid. But would you ever consider working with another developer, or are you satisfied in Fox Wright Productions as being your home?
Well, I'm satisfied with being my home. I mean, I might learn how to program just to help round out my skill set, but being an artist on another project is really tricky because you know, when you're the writer, by de facto there's a lot more control over how the story plays out. But you know, when we were making this game, it was very much a 50-50 type of creative endeavor, and you know, it's hard to go back on that, to just, you know, if you were just to be purely just like, you know, doing the art assets. So yeah, no, I'm very happy with continuing as just Fox Wright.
Terrific. I'm glad to hear it. I'm glad to hear it, because you guys do phenomenal work together. So I'd hate to see that broken apart. And the last question from the fans is from Jerry Moto, who asked, how many evil endings are in your game? So you talked about how a lot of the endings can be self-contained, but to also give bits and pieces from other routes or other endings. How many, I guess, would be considered evil? Not necessarily the bad ending, but, oh, you've gone to the dark side.
Well,
very few.
Yeah, we try to keep it pretty gray, so that's kind of a tricky question to answer. Like every route that you take has pros and cons to it. I don't want to elaborate on that too much because it will spoil things for you, but it's just one of those things where you'll see what I mean.
briefly running through it in my head, because I sort of have them all kind of I kind of have them all memorized because I wrote them, but I think right now the only one that I can say for sure is completely evil is only about one ending.
Ooh.
Out of like the 24. And even that one, you know, I wrote it in a way that you don't necessarily have to look at that ending and then think, oh, well, you know, I definitely messed up here. So I tried to make each one have a pro and a con. You know, each one have a dark cloud and a silver lining. So yeah, I don't think you have to think about it in terms of good and evil. I think in terms of like what would you like? What would you like good to happen, and what would you like bad to happen? What types of consequences are you willing to live with?
Nice. All right, well, that brings an end to Talking Back, and that brings us into the final questions. These are the questions I ask everybody because I like to have a wide variety of answers to the same question, see where everyone stands. So the first one is sorry, I don't have my glasses on for some dumb reason. What is something you wish people would ask you just so you could answer it? It's the question you've been dying to answer, but no one has popped that question yet.
That is a really good question, and one which an answer does not immediately spring to my mind. What about you, Vol?
No, nothing quite comes to mind offhand. That's tricky.
Nice. Well, if maybe if ever one comes to you, we can do a part 2. I don't know, one that isn't 2 hours long. This went way longer than I intended. But I've been very happy to have you guys with you. You've been an absolute joy to talk to. This sounds like an outro, but we're not quite done yet. I still got a few questions to go through. The second question is, if you could have any superpower, what would it be? I love asking this question because you always get weird answers. I love it.
You want to take that one?
Sure. I guess I don't know, mind control, I guess.
Ooh, mind control.
That seems like that would be super useful. You could definitely, you know, you could get world peace or whatever by getting, you know, commanding everyone to stop fighting or stop polluting. I don't know. Maybe that's a political science answer. You immediately think mind control. I don't know. What about you, Volk?
I'd probably take the ability to alter reality.
Ooh, reality bending.
That's good.
Yep.
Dang.
I remember Will Ferrell was asked this question by Barbara Walters, and he said speed reading.
Speed reading.
It was the perfect one, and then she said, speed reading, that doesn't sound too useful. And then he said, okay, second choice would be the ability to throw up on command. And she said, why would you ever want to do that? I said, let's just say you're at a really boring party, and you can just be like, oh, I really have to go, I'm feeling kind of sick. Really thought that Will Ferrell did a great job answering that question.
That's awesome. That's freaking awesome, man. I love it. Third question, what would make you feel like you quote unquote made it?
We already did. We made it. We had a game that was successful. We were able to be on the trending page, of Steam. We were when they did the, what's it called? I think it was the Steam 40. Yeah, they ranked all the games that were released within the month, and I think the Pirate's Fate was like number 11 of all games that came out for the whole month.
Wow!
In terms of positive reviews, so we had great reviews. We had we had a lot of people buy the game, like the game. We're obviously, the game wasn't successful enough that we're all millionaires now, but we have enough resources that we can consider making another project. So yeah, I feel like we made it. I feel very happy and very proud.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty much my answer.
Fantastic. I haven't had anyone say that yet. That's just heartwarming right there. I love it. Love and like everything. I gotta stop saying that. Well, we're almost done anyway. The second to last question is, do you have any interesting or funny stories at hotels?
Hotels?
Yeah, anything weird or funny happened to you while you were at a hotel?
I don't necessarily have a funny story, but I'll tell you about my favorite hotel amenity. I was at a hotel in I forget what Hawaiian island it was. Not Maui. I think it was Kauai or something. And they had a pool that had like an underwater grotto that had its own bar in the grotto. So you swam, you went under this little thing, and then at the very bottom there was a bar in the pool with a bartender that would make you any drink you wanted for free.
Well, shit, that sounds fucking amazing.
It was the coolest thing. And I mean, I was a kid. I wasn't even drinking alcohol, so I just asked for like fruit juice and stuff. But it was so cool. It was just like, it was this cool little thing, and anyone could do it. And it was just like, how do they even think to do something like this? Like, how did they even think to pay this guy? So your job is to just like stand in this like ankle high water and just like make the drinks for people who find you. It was just the most outrageous thing I'd ever seen.
That's freaking sweet.
I guess I'm trying to think of one that's worth telling. Well, I guess the only one that comes to mind that would be concise is that I was in a hotel that repeatedly had the fire alarm go off, and we had to evacuate the building each time. And it would be like, I don't know, 1 or 2 in the morning on a weekday, and I was with my dad at the time. He was traveling on business, and we have to go out there. We have to wait. We couldn't bring our stuff with us. Usually, we're like, not even fully dressed. And it was interesting to see all the people there, because that's the point where you actually see who's staying in the hotel, because they're all out in front. And it was interesting to see like the demographic composition of everybody. And how they were all equally annoyed and afraid. So,
one of the very few universal experiences is being pissed when you're woken up at 1 in the morning by a fire alarm.
Exactly.
Well, thank you guys very much for being here with me. You survived 2 hours of talking, and it's a lot of... Ow! Ow, I just hit my knee. My knee has not survived. My knee has not survived the 2 hours of talking. You guys have been an absolute pleasure to talk to. I am so happy to have learned so much about this game and games in general, and about you guys and your histories. It has been very interesting to me. I look forward very much to how people respond to this one, and there's nothing left to do but to let you guys have the final word. What's tell them about where they can find the Pirate's Fate, all your other works, your websites. Plug time. Get out your plugs. It's time for the plugs.
You can get the Pirates Fate on Steam. You can also get it on Humble Bundle. If you're concerned about DRM, you can get it DRM free on Humble Bundle. You can get our books on Amazon and at Gumroad. I provided the links there, so you can do those. And in terms of my website, I'll go ahead and drop that. If you're interested in reading my books and you think that 45 books is a lot, I have a story searcher that you can use and search by category if that's important to you. I think Volkenfox would probably like to leave a link to his Fur Affinity page, right?
Nah, probably not that, but you know, you can always look that up if you'd like. If you're looking just to see like what kind of game projects and news and so forth, I'd probably say stick with my Twitter, which is Twitter? At Volkenfox. That's where it's like, you know, a lot of my galleries I dump everything I do, but if you're just looking for like news, that's the place usually to go.
Nice. All right. That was the finish line. Thank you all very much for watching this. Thank you, TF Wright and Volkenfox, for being here with me today and talking with us all. Thank you all very much for watching, and have a wonderful day. And until next time, ladies and gentlemen, I've been the trainer professional speaking for the voice of my own head when I say, fairly well. Bye, everyone!